shooting people. What am I doing?
Sneak around, use air vents. You've never seen Die Hard?
This episode of Rick and Morty starts off with a Die Hard. We're back at Blips and Chitz in the A Roy Well-Lived game. Call back to season 2. Apparently Morty's mind has fractured into the entire population of the game, and Rick is Roy, and they are trying to bring Morty's mind together and assimilate to the point where they can bring 100% of his consciousness and his mind back into the real world, while Summer is dealing with a diehard fan alien race. I think they said diehard probably 150 times in this episode. No exaggeration, like so much. I enjoyed this episode's creativity, but it felt a little jumbled in a few of the spots. The only thing that I really take away from this is that Rick isn't willing to say that he loves you, but Rick is willing to show you why he loves you. If Rick is willing to go against his anti-religious mindset to basically create a Morty religion in the Roy game to bring as much of his grandson back, I guess that's the closest thing we'll ever get to Rick saying I love you.
I like this episode. I agree with you, it's a little bit jumbled for me. But again, with Rick and Morty, I never know if that's like, if it's actually jumbled or if I'm a fucking idiot. So it's like hard to tell between the two. The Die Hard stuff was funny. It had a lot of small funny moments as far as like an overall episode. Like it was fine. I found myself laughing more at that portion of the episode than, the actual video game. I do love the fact that that entire world is capped off by Morty's own like consciousness. So anything beyond the information of a 14-year-old, like fucking impossible. So like they did a news broadcast and the title of the news was Good Enough News. Like little details like that I think are so funny. Or when he was touching on like Jewish heritage and he was like, fucking the hat, shit like that. I thought that was so funny. I think that's where Rick and Morty is always most funny to me, is like in those little small details that are really only like a 5 to 10 second moment of the show that are always so funny to me. I agree with you. I thought it was like a sweet gesture for Rick to go against his sort of anti-religious pact as a means to get Morty back. And I thought it was interesting that, he could pull any Morty from any world that he'd like and place him there, and that'd be good enough. It's the fact that he's trying to recreate the one or assimilate the original one. There's just something sweet about that, to where there's just something intangible about that Morty that he wants, as opposed to the fucking billions of others he could choose from. So I thought that was nice.
I didn't really like the episode. I felt like they were trying to make jokes about shows that do bits by doing a exaggerated bit, but I felt like it was still just way too long. Like every time they cut to Summer, it was just Die Hard. Everything was literally, I think most of her lines in this episode were just Die Hard. It ran dry for me super early. I don't know. I think maybe the joke went over my head, or maybe I was just impatient about it, but they went at it for too long. I will agree with y'all about Rick I noticed it in the first episode. I'm not sure if I mentioned it. It seems like this new Rick showing up has kind of got him in such a different headspace to where he is willing to confess things or do things that he wouldn't do before. Like even in the first episode, whenever Summer releases the beacon, he comes back and he's like, I know you could do it. He's giving her props for everything, and then he's giving Morty props, and in this one he even says he loves him and he respects him. Like is he like still low-key trying to use Morty? Like is it love, is it respect, or is he using Morty because he is the Morty for evil Rick? So I just don't know if I can trust it yet.
It's so tricky with Rick, because it's like he could mean all those things and still be a shitty person to Morty. That's the interesting part about him, is that he could love and respect him and still absolutely manipulate and use him. Like it can all be simultaneously true, because he's such a dog shit person.
But does that also mean that Morty's lived like 5 billion lives altogether? Like his brain it has to be overloading with the amount of information that he has at all times.
You know how multifaceted any regular person is, and you get to like interact with like every portion of that on an individual basis, but like as a collective entity, it's just one person. That's fucking weird to me.
By the time the show goes off, I feel like we're always thinking that Rick's going to be the top dog, but I feel like Morty goes through so much shit that eventually that he's just going to be like a multi-dimensional like being or something like that, and he's going to be that guy.
Fucking Dr. Manhattan, but Morty.
Exactly.
Summer says Die Hard a few times, and we were just all like, okay. But then, like, after 5 minutes, they probably say it like 20 times, and it's like, all right. And then once you realize that the whole episode is just going to be Die Hard nonstop, or let's just be funny about it. Die Hard's been overdone so many times, so let's literally just be super meta about it and say Die Hard a trillion times. Even making fun of it that it's in different books. Every religion and every race has its own version of Die Hard. That's how overdone it is now. So I think if that's what they were trying to go with that, I think that's pretty funny. And now people can stop telling them to do a Die Hard episode. I also think that was their way of like saying fuck you to the fans that have been like, dude, Die Hard. It's like, shut the fuck up here. Die Hard, Die Hard, Die Hard. There it is. There it
Yeah.
is. It's done.
I thought it was interesting that like each Morty had this kind of fear that they were expendable to Rick, and like they had a lot of conversations about being expendable to Rick and just how insignificant they are as an individual. I think there's something to be said that like every version of Morty, every version of him in that world feels something like that. Like that seems to be the only constant among all of them, is how they feel as though Rick doesn't actually genuinely give a shit about them in a way that's like consequential.
Well, it's implied that he comes back with 50% of his brain, or maybe a little more. Like he definitely is not coming back with the whole brain. And then once he is back in the real world, they save Summer from the Die Hard situation. You know, Morty's acting a little different. Summer even asks what's going on. I think this could be a way, if this lasts in the future episodes, a way to almost dial Morty back. Because like you were saying earlier, Corey, Morty has gone through so much shit at this point that he's like becoming his own god. And kind of he can do a lot of adventures without Rick now. Like he's so well experienced in these things that he actually can do stuff without Rick and you know, seemingly come out on top. If this is their way to be like, well, we're removing 50%, you know, we don't know what 50% of Morty's brain, but we are going to make it where he's more compliant. Because when he's back in the real world, he was like, oh wow, Rick, we made it. Like very just like all on board with Rick. So I don't know if that was part of the plan all along. You know, Rick's such a fucking maniacal dude. It could have been the plan from the jump, but I don't know. I think that'll be interesting moving forward if they keep that. Now, if this is just like a one-off kind of bit, and then next episode Morty's right back to being like the hardest grandson of all time, then it's like, well, what was the point?
I do like the idea of almost nerfing Morty in a way, because he is like at this point his own version of like Franklin Richards almost, where it's like it seems like he's almost just as capable as Rick in a lot of ways, or is at least getting to that space.
Even with Summer, like Summer's like, fuck, just being left to do a Die Hard. Like, I guess I have to go figure this out. Like, Rick's grandchildren are actually super fucking capable, especially with what Summer did in the last episode. And it proves like Earth Beth being so worthless, I guess, in the situation, but Space Beth having the experience. Like, Rick is basically making his entire family battle hardened to some degree. And I still think it's funny to harp back on last week's episode that Jerry, the best version of him, is the one where no one's fucking around. I think we just need to make a push that Rick and Morty's hour-long episodes and really flesh out the stories, because it almost is so fucking fast.
Yeah.
That's the quickest 30 minutes I've ever had watching a TV show is watching Rick and Morty right now.
Where nothing but also everything happened simultaneously. Like it doesn't feel like anything's changed that much. But it's like massive universal for verses and shit. Yeah, it's weird.
But I will say Justin Roiland, I think he voiced like 99% of the people in this episode. So hope he got some good water in between takes, or some beer, whatever he does. Because goddamn, he was literally every voice on the planet in the Roy game. If you missed our reaction of last week's episode, go ahead and click on the screen right here, because we actually really enjoyed last week's episode and we had a lot of Easter eggs to share with you. And we'll be here every single Sunday, so make sure you subscribe to join the Dork Side, because you don't want to miss any of our further reaction videos for Rick and Morty. And until the next time, guys, peace.